Political parties and independent candidates had until 9 p.m. tonight to submit their candidate lists and make their deposits to the Independent Electoral Commission. This is ahead of the upcoming local government elections. The IEC extended the cut-off times for submissions as uncertainty about when the polls will take place heads to court. The Commission says failure to make payment will lead to automatic disqualification. The IEC says 97 political parties and 353 independent candidates have so far submitted the relevant documents. Now, political parties and independent candidates had until 9 p.m. tonight to submit their candidate lists and make the deposits to the Independent Electoral Commission ahead of the upcoming municipal elections. The IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Masego Sheburi, joins us now to tell us a little bit more on this. Masego, good evening and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight on In Focus. First and foremost, the consideration that went into the idea of extending the 5 p.m. deadline to 9 p.m. Were politics playing any part in that?
Thanks for the opportunity. No, as you would recall, even during the Constitutional Court matter on Friday, parties had made case out that they had been constrained in arranging proper candidate nomination processes. And following a number of inquiries from persons who wanted to contest, the Commission decided to adjust the timetable and extend the cut-off time by a factor of 4 hours so that they can increase the rate of those persons who want to participate and will not be able to participate if the time was not adjusted. So it was not intended to benefit any or one of the political contestants.
So it had nothing to do with the fact that the majority party was not yet ready, or at least had not had their ducks in a row?
No, it had nothing to do with that. As I speak, I'm not even sure if the majority party has submitted or has not submitted.
As far as you know, up until this point, any parties that have been disqualified for missing the deadline? I mean, the deadline was just literally 5 minutes ago.
No. We will not know at this stage. What I can say is that by 6 p.m., we had received 48,000 candidates, and those who had been captured to represent political parties. In addition, we had also received 883 candidate submissions from persons who wanted to contest as independents. Between then and now, the number would have increased substantially, and we will only know by Friday once we have issued notices of non-compliance to political parties how many of those parties satisfied the requirements for contesting.
Now, we've been debating the idea of the value of the election deposit fee and whether or not this is conducive to the democratic participation of all in this election process. Why do you emphasize this particular issue of the deposits?
Deposits are not intended as a money-making scheme by the Electoral Commission, nor are they intended to create a bar to participation. To the contrary, deposits are levied in order to test seriousness by those interested persons to earnestly contest. As we speak, the deposit for this year have not changed. They are the same as those amounts that were levied in 2016. So in effect, the amount of deposit has reduced if you factor in inflation. So it is not a money-making scheme because in any case, a party that forfeits the deposit, that deposit is not kept by the Electoral Commission, but it's transferred to the National Fiscus.
Yeah. How do you then rate the weight of what is important, dealing with the frivolity of submissions, but also weighing that against the environment in which elections are being held? And we spoke extensively, for example, about the access to the economy. Many of those who would want to participate are young people. 34% of the population of South Africa are living in poverty and are affected, therefore, by this poverty, and this affects their rate of participation. Lack of administrative experience, for example, that deprive many people the equal access.
Indeed, those were the considerations that weighed heavily on the Commission before it made its determination, to the extent that it also published the amount that it intended to levy for public comments, for people to make representations. Of the 14 representations that we received, none questioned either the basis for levying the deposit, or nor a case being made that those deposits constitute a barrier to participation. We are mindful of the economy, and that is why the amount of the deposit has remained unchanged since 2016.
Yeah. And who prescribes who gets disqualified for standing?
The good thing is that those things are provided for in the law. And there are two primary bases on which a party or a candidate may be disqualified. The first is that if a party by 9 o'clock fails to submit a list of its candidates, that cannot be remedied. Similarly, if a party submits a list of candidates but does not pay a deposit, that cannot be remedied. The things that can be corrected, for example, are where a party has not submitted certain documents, like, for example, an acceptance of nomination by a candidate, they've not attached the ID copy of a candidate. Those we will give political parties notice no later than Friday that their submissions were non-compliant, and parties will have until Monday to correct those submissions to make them compliant.
Yeah. So you will not be entertaining any request for extension for the payment of deposits. This matter was previously ventilated in the courts, and the court's view is that as you apply the rules, as you apply the regulation, it should be to the enjoyment of this political right more than it is to the prohibiting one from enjoying this political right.
Indeed, that is correct. But also the Apex Court is also at record having said that there are certain administrative requirements that are important for the enjoyment of the right to stand for public office. So if you do not have firm cut-off dates or firm cut-off lines for candidate nomination, you may also imperil the enjoyment of the right of persons to stand for public office. So there must be a balance and not swing the scale either way to the detriment of contestants or to the detriment of proper administrative arrangements to ensure free and fair elections.
Don't we then stand a risk there of potentially creating and sustaining an elite democracy in a developing country?
We think that from the perspective of the Electoral Commission, we have struck a very good balance. Is there scope for improvement? Certainly there is scope for improvement. Is there scope to do things differently in future? Certainly there is scope for that. And we must continuously strive for that balance that ensures that our democracy is fitted to our context. It recognizes the hardships and difficulties that obtain in the Republic.
What does the timetable then look like now that the cutoff has hit 9 p.m.? What follows next?
The next thing is that we will inform political parties by the 27th of August if they have issues that they need to correct to make their submissions compliant. Parties will have until the 30th of August to correct those shortcomings. If they don't, those candidates will be removed from the list of candidates. Again, on the 31st of August, this is important, we will notify all those parties who have candidates that appear on their list but also appear on the lists of other parties. And by the 7th of September, we will compile the list and make it available of all persons who have met the requirements to contest, and similarly confirm all political parties that have met the requirements to contest the local government elections in 2021.
Yeah. Should you be successful in your court application, does that affect the timetable? And more importantly, will you be giving political parties another opportunity, or this is the opportunity they have to submit their candidate list?
Indeed, there are two critical things. If we are successful at the Constitutional Court, we will be able to increase the chances that the election that we run will be constitutionally compliant, because we can schedule a general voter registration weekend where we open all our network of 23,000 100 voting stations to register persons who want to register as voters. This is critical for the following reasons. As you correctly indicated, we are a young population, and persons who've just attained the age of majority may not have had opportunities to register as voters. Secondly, people who want to stand for elected office may still be registered in areas that have no relationship with wards they wish to contest, so they will have that opportunity. But more importantly, if we are successful in getting the relief that we've asked from the court, it means we're starting from fresh. We will issue a new timetable, which will have new deadlines for candidate nominations. So parties that wish to revisit their list will be at liberty to do so. Those that want to confirm their list will also be at liberty to do so. So that, we think, strengthens the chances that the election, if delayed beyond the 1st of November, will be more constitutionally compliant than an election that is held in October the 27th.
Just out of interest, I mean, should it happen that an independent candidate in this time of COVID, of course, we consider the environment in which the elections are happening, come the 27th of October, they have to begin their process of isolation because they have contracted the COVID-19 virus, and they are therefore unable to, I suppose, monitor and participate in the processes of monitoring that the elections are conducted free and fair. Would they still be considered free and fair for that particular candidate?
A candidate is entitled to appoint an agent who can represent them at a voting station in a normal course of event. For example, in a typical ward, you will have between 3 and, say, 8 voting districts. So the candidate may not be able to be present at all those voting stations. So for that purpose, like political parties, they can appoint persons who will represent them and observe elections on their behalf and raise objections on their behalf.
Masego Sheburi, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much for joining us. Deputy Chief Electoral Officer at the IEC there with us.